p.m. on Tuesday, November 26th, here in Seoul, South Korea. Let's first get started by connecting to our Lee Ji-yoon, who is at BEXCO, venue for the ASEAN-KOREA Commemorative Summit. She's going to give us a rundown of everything that's happening down there in the southern port city. Ji-yoon.
Thanks, Mark. President Moon Jae-in, a little over an hour ago, greeted and welcomed leaders of all 10 ASEAN members here at the summit venue of BEXCO for the two sub-sessions scheduled to take place today. Now, the first part of the session has just started under the theme of ASEAN-Korea 30 and 30, indicating the past 30 years of relations between the two sides and a framework for the next 30 years of cooperation that the leaders hope to map out. During today's sessions, the leaders will be laying out their visions for future plans, partnerships with the Moon Jae-in administration, renewing its commitment to the new Southern policy. Yesterday was the first day of the ASEAN-Korea Commemorative Summit, and marking the occasion, President Moon Jae-in hosted a grand welcoming dinner banquet here in Busan for the ASEAN leaders. And our Kim Da-mi has the highlights from the banquet.
With its fusion of tradition and cutting-edge technologies, the welcoming dinner banquet was more than a dinner, but rather a symbol of unity in diversity. A hologram of a large bronze bell from Korea's Silla dynasty, known as the Bell of King Seongdeok, welcomed each leader with a toll as President Moon and the First Lady greeted guests. The four-course dinner included rice cake dessert made with rice produced in all 10 ASEAN countries, respecting their diversity and their similar roots, which is symbolized by the country's staple food. While the dishes symbolize the prosperity and harmony of Southeast Asian nations, the cultural performances highlighted peace and hope. South Korea's leading display technology beautifully mastered each country's traditional dances. And 5G technology and motion capture further mesmerized the leaders and 300 other guests with mixed reality technology where reality and virtual reality coexist. Local magician Lee Eun-geul also spoke about the power of hope, saying that hope can spread to everyone in the blink of an eye. A joint orchestra consisting of South Koreans and musicians from ASEAN countries further lifted the atmosphere of peace between the 10 ASEAN nations with their diverse voices and instruments. Leaders' dinner banquets are often private affairs, but South Korea's presidential office publicized the dinner this time, noting that President Moon and the ASEAN-Korea Commemorative Summit are for the people. Kim Da-mi, Arirang News.
Strengthening people-to-people exchanges is also high on the agenda for ASEAN nations and South Korea. Now, this includes youth leadership programs to help talented women and girls contribute more to the region's economic and social development. Our Woo Soo-young has the story.
Sharing skills and culture, young women from South Korea and Southeast Asia are helping each other grow as strong, competent females in their respective societies. As part of a university exchange, students from Seoul Sungmyeong Women's University visited Laos and Indonesia this summer to help their local counterparts develop ICT and leadership skills.
We help them develop apps based on the Android and Arduino platforms. I think that to come up with practical, useful solutions for women, we need female developers in IT all over the world.
While preparing for a presentation together on solving social problems, we were able to brainstorm and narrow down ideas together. I enjoyed this the most and got to know the other students better as well.
Local students came up with ideas such as baby monitor apps for working women in rural areas.
This is my first time to learn exactly new skill about ICT. I love to see how technology can invent things to reduce the problem.
By transferring practical skills to raise digital literacy and encourage entrepreneurship, the program aims to help women find jobs and advance their economic status.
Since 2016, about 1,300 students took part in our local training. We aim to promote women's empowerment and capability building of female talent who will contribute to the social-economic development of the nation in the age of the fourth industrial revolution.
The program is also focused on female empowerment.
the women need ICT training or leadership training to make the student more confident and to challenge every issue that will face in the society. So even though our body weak if compared to men, but spiritual must be strong.
Launched in 1992, the UniTwin Network brings universities together and promotes gender equality and women's participation through media and ICT. At a recent briefing ceremony held in Seoul, executives of leading universities from Cambodia, Indonesia and Laos expressed their willingness to deepen their cooperation with South Korean universities. As South Korea and the 10 ASEAN member states deepen their ties through the Special Commemorative Summit, people-to-people exchanges and talent nurturing programs are expected to grow significantly. 오수영 Arirang News.
South Korea will expand development partnership with ASEAN countries to promote peace and prosperity in the region. Seoul's Foreign Minister Kang Kyung-hwa attended a signing ceremony of the nation's official aid agency, which sealed an MOU with Cambodia, Laos, the Philippines, Myanmar, and Vietnam. Along with key officials from those countries and the Secretary General of ASEAN, Kang inked the deal specifying core areas of development in infrastructure, ICT, smart cities, agriculture, and transportation. Now, over the years, South Korea has designated 6 ASEAN members as key partners, allocating more than 20% of its foreign aid to projects in the region. The e-commerce market in Southeast Asia's biggest economy, Indonesia, has become an investment magnet in recent years. Now, leading the trend is Indonesian unicorn Bukalapak, which has been really aggressive in expanding its footprint, reaching to other ASEAN nations, including Malaysia, Singapore, and Brunei, while foreign and local investors are pumping in big money to capitalize on Indonesia's fast-growing economy. And this morning, to hear more about the success story behind his business and his future plans, Bukalapak's co-founder and president, Fajrin Rasyid, joins me live at the Media Center for the 2019 ASEAN-KOREA Commemorative Summit. Welcome from Busan.
Thank you.
All
Thanks
right.
for having me.
Now, first and foremost, though, for those of us who may not be familiar with the term unicorn startup, tell us more about what this is and how Bukalapak fits into that category.
Right, so first of all, startup itself is actually a business who aims to solve the local problems using technology, usually in the forms of application, mobile apps, or hardwares. And unicorn startups are those startups who then used by a lot of people, and then it provides economic value and has achieved valuation of more than $1 billion US. In South Korea, we have more than 10 unicorns. And in ASEAN, we have about 8 or 9 unicorns, and Bukalapak is one of them.
Okay. Now, South Korea's top securities firm, Mira, has said, and the internet portal giant Naver announced earlier this year that it will invest, the joint venture will invest $50 million US into Bukalapak. Tell us more about this.
Yeah, so you are correct that Mira Asset and Naver have both invested in Bukalapak, and recently, just 1 month ago, another Korean company, Sinhan Bank, also invested in Bukalapak. So we have now 3 foreign investors from South Korea, among other investors from other countries like Singapore, Japan, China, and others. So this proves that when we talk about the technology or startups, it's not just in developed market like South Korea. It's also happening in emerging markets like ASEAN, especially Indonesia. And some investors from South Korea has seen the potential of this market, hence tried to invest or put a footprint in this industry.
Oh, enormous potential indeed. So how did Bukalapak become one of the biggest e-commerce platforms in Indonesia? I mean, what stands behind Bukalapak's success story?
So going back with the definition of startups, we try to solve the problem in Indonesia, which is, if we talk about Indonesia, it's a very SME or small medium enterprise driven economy. We have over 60 million SMEs in the countries. So to empower the country, we think that it is a good thing if we can empower the SMEs. So in 2010, we created a Bukalapak to help empower SMEs so that they're able to sell nationwide. Because before the internet, before Bukalapak, they can only sell within their neighborhood. So their sales potential is limited. Now with the online, suddenly they can reach into more than 260 million population of Indonesia.
Right, and definitely you guys have a big population and much mobile penetration too, right? So that definitely went into the play.
Correct.
there.
So that's why after 9 years operation of Bukalapak, we have now successfully secured or empowered more than 5 million of Indonesian SMEs through the platforms. And we also track the KPIs like what is their actually revenue per merchants, right? So are they really empowered through Bukalapak? And we saw the data from Bukalapak that in 2018, the sales per merchants is actually growing 3 times compared to the previous years. So they are indeed empowered, and hopefully they can be empowered going forward as well.
Okay, impressive growth indeed. Now, we know that you're speaking at the ASEAN-KOREA Startup Summit today. So how are you planning to share your experience and your success story in Indonesia to perhaps further boost relations with other ASEAN nations as well as with South Korea?
Right. So I think that the solution that we develop in Indonesia might be something that can inspire startups here in South Korea, and vice versa. We also hope to learn from startups in South Korea and also from other countries. In fact, I actually studied in Korea once in 2008, and what inspired me to create Bukalapak, one of them is coming from Korea. That was actually the first time I tried to do online shopping in 2008. So this kind of exchange of solution and knowledge is something that I think is beneficial in this era where the countries become more borderless and a lot of ideas can be exchanged from each other.
So definitely Bukalapak probably helps to make other startups go even higher and go even beyond other nations, I guess. But what are your future plans? I mean, do you plan to expand your footprint even further, even beyond?
So I think you mentioned just now that we have expanded into other countries in Southeast Asia, including Malaysia, Singapore, Brunei. So that is one of our future plan growth. The second thing is we are expanding from just e-commerce into offline spaces as well. So we are probably sort of like transforming from e-commerce into commerce company, because now we have both presence in online and also offline. In online, I mentioned that we have now secured more than 5 million merchants, and in offline, we have partnered with over 1 million of traditional retailers. Because in Indonesia, if we talk about the traditional offline retailers, we don't talk more about the traditional, or we don't talk more about the big chain supermarkets, but we talk about the traditional retailers, those mom and pop stores, which flourishing in Indonesia because of the geographic situation. So right now, Indonesia actually have more than 5 million of these traditional retailers, and 1 million of them have partnered with Bukalapak.
Wow. And I also read an interview about you saying that you are looking into the Middle East market as well.
So just now I mentioned that Bukalapak is now expanding into a few countries in Southeast Asia, and hopefully we don't stop there, right? We are thinking that if we can do successfully in Southeast Asia, then we can actually also expand to other countries as well. Although right now I we haven't sort of like mentioned when are we going to do that, but it's something that within our thinking at the moment.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming in today and your insights.
You're welcome. It's a nice thing as well.
All right. Now, that does it for me from the Press Center at the 2019 ASEAN-KOREA Commemorative Summit. For more on the day's top stories, I'll toss you back to Mark at Arirang's News Center. Mark, take it away.
Thank you very much for that, June. That was a very interesting interview there with a very entrepreneurial person who is at the ASEAN Summit down there in Busan. Now, we are going to talk about the rest of the day's news because there's plenty of other things going on at the moment. Shifting our focus, though, to the Seoul-Tokyo Intel Sharing Pact, which was extended by South Korea late last week, and you might have assumed that would be the end of it for now. However, you would be wrong. It's proving to be a controversy that's hard to shake. Japanese officials declared the deal as a one-sided win for them, with no concessions made on trade, and also denied it apologized for Seoul for its obvious distortions of what the facts actually are. Shin Se-min reports.
In a readout to reporters, South Korea's senior presidential secretary for public communication again confirmed that Tokyo did apologize to Seoul for the controversy Japanese officials created by claiming that the GSOMIA decision was a total win for Japan. South Korea's presidential office was responding to a report in the Japanese daily Yomiuri Shimbun, quoting an official at Japan's foreign ministry as denying that Japan had apologized to South Korea. According to Seoul's National Security Director Chung Eui-yong, the day before, Japan made an apology after Seoul filed a formal complaint over the distorted way Japan made the GSOMIA announcement. Chung had also expressed grave regret over Japan possibly having leaked details about GSOMIA's extension before it was announced last Friday. And he added the Japanese Trade Ministry exaggerated what it got out of the deal by claiming it had made no concessions at all. Japan's Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshihide Suga doubled down on that Monday, saying the export curbs were completely unrelated to GSOMIA and that Japan did not apologize. Nevertheless, the South Korean government is clear that it will handle diplomacy with Japan in a principled way. Seoul's trade minister, also on the sidelines of the ASEAN summits in Busan, said the administration will work to speed up the hosting of a policy dialogue between the two countries over export controls. No end in sight, it seems, as to back and forth between the two neighbors on who said what and what was agreed. On top of the warnings already established, the South Korean presidential office is firm that everything depends on Japan's attitude in future negotiations. Shin Se-min, Arirang News, Busan.
The U.S. has made it clear that its demands for a higher contribution from Seoul for its defense cost sharing will not be impacted by Seoul's decision to conditionally extend GSOMIA, which is that intel sharing pact between Seoul and Tokyo. The Nihon Keizai Shimbun reported Monday that U.S. Assistant Secretary of State David Stilwell said Seoul's decision to conditionally extend GSOMIA is a separate issue from defense cost sharing. Stilwell said lumping the two issues together is not rational, but that Seoul's decision gave hope, a positive reinforcement for strengthening trilateral security cooperation among the three countries. Stilwell said the U.S. is looking to help facilitate dialogue between Seoul and Tokyo for remaining disputes. That's not expected to be resolved in a short period of time. The U.S. played an important role in delaying the termination of GSOMIA, according to reports. This is according, in fact, to the South Korean ambassador to the United States. Lee Soo-hyuk had a foreign correspondents meeting in Washington. He said the decision strengthened trust and communications between Seoul and Washington. He added, while it seemed like the U.S. was pressuring South Korea to keep the deal, it's understood that top U.S. officials had visited Seoul and Tokyo to actively encourage the two sides to reach an agreement. Now, Pope Francis met with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe in Japan on Monday before delivering a speech in which he called for the abolishment of nuclear weapons. Lee Seung-jae with the details.
During a sit-down with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe on Monday, Pope Francis called on world leaders to find solutions to conflict through dialogue.
History teaches us that conflicts and misunderstandings between peoples and nations can find valid solutions only through dialogue, the only weapon worthy of man and capable of ensuring lasting peace.
On Sunday, Pope Francis visited Hiroshima and Nagasaki, two cities hit by atomic bombs during World War II, and emphasized the importance of communication, saying dialogue is the most powerful weapon to ensure lasting peace. Nuclear weapons are a sensitive issue in Japan given its history. The Pope's reference to dialogue being a solution to world's nuclear issues seemed to point towards the lack of progress in resolving North Korea's denuclearization and North Korea's proximity to Japan. In response, Abe said his government's goal is to rid the world of nuclear weapons.
We have the mission to lead the world without nuclear weapons. This is my unyielding belief and the determined policy of Japanese government.
Pope Francis re-emphasized the importance of dialogue when dealing with nuclear issues, saying it's the only weapon worthy of man and capable of ensuring lasting peace. 이승재, Arirang News.
Former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg has resigned from his post as the UN Special Envoy for Climate Action to focus his attention on running for the US presidency. According to the UN spokesperson on Monday, the billionaire sent a letter of resignation to UN Chief Antonio Guterres on November 11th, nearly 2 weeks before officially announcing his bid for the White House. Bloomberg announced his candidacy on Sunday in a written statement saying he's running for president as a Democrat to try and defeat Donald Trump and rebuild America. His entrance comes just 10 weeks before primary voting begins. And staying with environmental news, greenhouse gases in the Earth's atmosphere hit a record high in 2018, surpassing the average yearly increase of the last decade. According to the World Meteorological Organization on Monday, concentrations are showing no sign of slowdown, let alone a decline. The latest report by the UN agency says the biggest contributor to the increase is carbon dioxide, a product of burning fossil fuel. The report added that the long-term trend means severe impacts on climate change, including rising temperatures, more extreme weather, and a rise in the sea level.
Good morning. The cold snap will ease today with temperatures hovering well above the season norms in most regions. But let's all do dress accordingly on way out. Busan, where the ASEAN-KOREA Commemorative Summit is underway, had rainy start to the day, but the rain will let up in the morning with the sun peeking through. Temperatures, though, will be around the same as yesterday. And for a closer look at today's temperatures, daily highs will get up to the double digits, Seoul topping out at 13 degrees Celsius under lots of clouds, while the rest of the country will see a fair amount of sunshine and do expect good to normal air quality as well. Readings will be right around the season norms for the rest of the week, while eastern parts of the country will see a mix of rain and snow on Wednesday into Thursday. That's Korea for you, and here's the international weather for viewers around the world.
Well, that's all the news and weather we have for now on this Tuesday morning here in Seoul. Stay tuned to Arirang TV. Plenty more coming up, including news throughout the day today. Until next time, goodbye.
활동하는 기업인들이 아시아와 세계 경제를 이끄는 기업입니다.